Now, before we get underway, and every morning all this week, we'll have a special session of around 15 minutes called Soccerex Fast Forward. And myself and Patrick McCreanor, the head of sales and marketing at Soccerex, will look ahead to the day. Patrick is based over in Eastbourne, and magically, by the power of technology, I can say a very good morning to Patrick now. Great to see you, Patrick, looking very suave and smart. And I suppose the starting point before we get into the schedule, based on our competition, is have you got a nickname?
Me personally, maybe not one that I could share, that the kids and the wife call me from time to time, but friends when I was playing football nicknamed me Parky because only my legs were like Mark Hughes's. I don't even know what connection was there, and then I was called Dr. Van after Van Brooklyn, the Dutch goalkeeper for a while, but yeah, nothing that stuck, thankfully.
I think he's mostly just known as Mac within the office. Now, Patrick, it's really exciting to be able to kick off Soccerex Connected. And I know that we're going to look back at the first edition and hear from the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, in just a second. But in terms of what we can expect today, what are some of your highlights?
Well, I think that was one of the more challenging things for me to do. I think the programming this time is fantastic. I mean, they always are at Soccerex events, but this year in particular is completely action-packed, including the additional Soccerex Heritage, which is on later in the day, which has a real look and focus at the origins of the legacy game. I think as part of our core panels, there are a couple that stand out for me. Football is big business. I think we all know that. You know, we all grew up loving a game, and we're now involved in the business side of it, which is, as the panel says, is really big business. And that includes people like Martin Semmens and Tom Vernon, as well as Trevor Watkins and Daniel Cravo. So there's a real sort of hard-hitting panel there. And also one that's quite close to home for me is developing the game worldwide. Obviously, it's hugely important to do that. Can continents like Africa do that without European support? And that involves people like Jason Roberts from CONCACAF and Steve over at Goal Africa as well, Steve Blue. So, yeah, some cracking panels today and the rest of the week to keep us all entertained, I think.
And we get underway at 12 o'clock. We'll hear from the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, in just a moment. But before that, let's look back on the first edition of Soccerex Connected, where we heard from an array of talent, some of whom are joining us again for the second edition. And one of those names is the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino. This was his message to close our last conference.
Dear delegates and friends of football, thanks for being here, and thanks for playing your part in keeping football on the agenda during these challenging and unprecedented times. We are all aware of the damage that this virus has inflicted on our communities, and it reminds us that health comes first. Even before football, health comes first. I would like to thank Soccerex chairman Joe D'Agrosa and the entire Soccerex team for welcoming FIFA and allowing me this platform today. I know other colleagues from FIFA have been involved in various discussions and debates during the course of this week. And I hope it's clear to everyone that FIFA is at the service of football. We are fully committed to finding the best solutions to keep football alive through these difficult times.
That was the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, speaking at the first edition of Soccerex Connected. Pat, let me bring you in again. This is Patrick McCreanor, the head of sales and marketing at Soccerex. Infantino was raising concerns about the pandemic. And of course, when we first spoke, and he was also talking at our original conference, we were sort of in new territory, weren't we, about how to put on a digital conference of this scale. How have things changed between then and now? And do you feel in a stronger position moving forwards as a digital business through conferences like this?
That's a good question. I think initially when I joined, one of the things that we were planning to do was innovate and enhance the Soccerex experience through content, digital platforms, social media, and all those things that are really important. And And it was a slog to move a physical analog business like Soccerex into the digital sphere. But I think that through innovation and a lot of studying different platforms and how to do that, I think that we'll do that a lot stronger. I think we're now in a position where hopefully this year the world goes back to normal and we can put on some physical events, but now we're very well versed in putting together the digital platforms. A lot of people would have seen the new business areas at Soccerex over the last 10 or 11 months, which includes things like social media management, content, public, and all of those things that have enabled us to turn from an events business into a digital media and events business, which is great, really. And I think that going forward, even when the world is back to normal, that horrible phrase that we've all coined now, I think that the digital platforms will be here to stay now that we know how to deliver them, how accessible our clients are, and they are to suggestion of them. And the idea is eventually we'll go back to doing 3 physical events, plus maybe 2 or 3 of these digital standalone events going forward as well, hopefully from 2022.
And Pat, it would be remiss, given we're talking about the inaugural edition of Soccerex Connected, not to start off by paying tribute to Gerard Houllier, who spoke in a fascinating panel on scouting alongside the Liverpool chief scout Barry Hunter. And unfortunately, shortly afterwards, he passed away. Gerard, known for his time at Liverpool, and when he was speaking with Soccerex, he was also the head of global football at Red Bull. And Gerard was always somebody who championed Soccerex. He was part of our family, and just so tragic to see him gone too soon, but great that we had those memories with him here at Soccerex, and even from your own personal point of view via Liverpool, because I know that you follow the Reds.
Yeah, we've all seen an immeasurable amount of loss over the last year or so. And without dwelling on that too much, it would be, like you say, remiss if we didn't acknowledge some of the members of the Soccerex family that have passed, including Diego Maradona, another childhood idol of mine. But Gerard was fantastic, both professionally and personally for me. Personally, I became a dad the year that we won the treble in 2001 at Liverpool. Gerard made that an infinitely memorable year for me. Actually, nothing was ever too much trouble for him, especially when reaching out to him to take part in panels or travel to events at Soccerex. Like you say, he was a sort of Soccerex champion and valued member of the Soccerex family. So it was a huge shock and something that I think some of us are still struggling to get our heads around, really. But he'll be a huge miss.
He certainly will, and we wish Gerard's family well and the Liverpool community rallying around that news as well. And you alluded to Diego Maradona as well, another death that sadly stunned the football community. How will you remember Maradona? Because when I think about him, all of that personality and talent and energy comes to mind, and you can't help but smile. And naturally, most people will go to the hand of God, but we shouldn't forget, in that same game, he scored the goal of the century too.
Yeah, it's really difficult for me to talk about Diego Maradona without getting really personal. He was literally my hero. I was looking forward to meeting him in Miami and ticking something off the bucket list that had been there since a 6 or 7 year old child. So my memories of him are of probably, in my opinion, the greatest to play the game, and one with a huge amount of personality that shone through in the way that he played the game. And I think he should and will be remembered as one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely, Pat. So let's come back to the schedule today. And you've already given us that overview. Of course, we're sponsored every day by a different partner. And today it's the Johan Cruyff Institute, which is why we're doing that fun nicknames competition in order to give away those signed shirts. I know that you are fully aware of the backstory of the Johan Cruyff Institute, which promotes education and higher level learning and has a good mentor program using a number of big names from the world of football. Why do you think they're such a perfect fit and partner for Soccerex?
I think twofold, really. Obviously, they carry the legacy of the name Cruyff, which is synonymous with football. And I think that education is key, whether youngsters in that are doing degrees or additional learning post-degree education, or indeed people like myself that might want to add an additional string to their bow professionally. I genuinely think that education is overlooked a lot of the time globally, and the work that they do in carrying the legacy of the Cruyff name can't be overlooked. I don't think it's a fantastic organisation to work with.
So we're going to be starting in just a moment by hearing from the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, and this panel is called View from the Top. So why don't you give us a view from the top just to help set this up from a Soccerex perspective? You're in sales and marketing. Has your approach to sales and marketing changed significantly over the course of the last year or so because of the pandemic?
I wouldn't say it's changed, maybe enhanced a little bit with the additional products and services that we can now offer clients. But I think that, Soccerex, very much like myself, has always had a relationship-based approach to selling. Thankfully, the guys that put the 25 years of work in to Soccerex 4 years before I came along have done a lot of work for me with building the brand and the association with that. So all we've done this year is really enhance that, bolted on a few additional things. The team have obviously changed, and I've brought in some guys that have worked with me in the past, as any manager within football tends to do. But I think that we've evolved a little bit, but whether or not we're not the most aggressive sales outfit there can be, because I don't think we need to be, and I don't think I'd like us to be either. Really well by client, as long as we continue to under promise and over deliver, then I think that we'll be here for another 25 years at least.
And then after that view from the top, Pat, we'll be moving on to a panel about football being big business, and perhaps asking a little bullishly whether the bigger business that's introduced into the football community, the less community orientated clubs become. What are your thoughts on this topic?
It's a real tough one. I think, as somebody that grew up with a love for the game, but now has ended up working on the business side of it, I genuinely see both sides, and it's a real juggling act for clubs to be able to keep their roots and their core work in local communities. But most season ticket holders still come from a relatively close distance to the ground, so you have to make sure that there is enough community work going in, supporting kids, supporting employment opportunities and all those sort of things, but also recognising that football is a global brand, and the guys responsible for running football clubs are responsible for their own brand and the growth of that. And I think the bigger the business, the bigger the role is for the club to continue to stay on trend. And like I say, it's a real juggling act, hence why there are teams of people at football clubs ensuring that all of those bases are covered, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, what's important to note about this panel, which is at 1 o'clock GMT, is we've got a range of different perspectives as well. So whereas you may have an opinion on a specific aspect, such as your club or your fan base, you might not have thought about it through the eyes of a CEO or even somebody affiliated to an NGO. So we're absolutely delighted to welcome Trevor Watkins for this panel, who's a partner at Pinsent Masons, Martin Siemens, who's the CEO of Southampton, Simon Balzaget, who is the chairman of GVS, and Tom Vernon, the founder of Right to Dream. So there's a number of different perspectives on that panel. And then we move firmly into the afternoon. At 2 o'clock, we'll have Developing the World Game, with or without European aid. And I guess, Pat, what's interesting about the pandemic is that smaller clubs and leagues are probably going to be even more reliant on big European teams, possibly for things like transfer sales, but certainly in terms of partnerships and learnings in order to get through the pandemic. So do you sense, because of COVID-19, football may become more Eurocentric?
I don't know. I mean, I'm speaking to lots of clients that have innovated really to do with that, really, and we've seen lots of apps and businesses launched to improve communications globally and improve all of those things that make up the sort of global operation of a football club. I think it'd be maybe slightly dangerous for a club to say, well, we're in Europe, so let's concentrate our efforts here, especially when you look at the success of producing and developing players from Africa, South America. Panels on those topics as well, both today and later on in the week, both from a scale investment perspective. And I think the ideal business model for most clubs would be to relatively deeply and sell high, especially the lower down the pyramid that you go. But I think that even as the larger clubs expand globally, there are obvious opportunities for lower league clubs in terms of the loan system and sort of things as well. The younger, maybe European based players to get loaned out to the clubs lower down the pyramid to enhance their squads. Might be more of a short-term fix than some of them will like, but I think it will trickle down. I do think that events like this enable us to be really global and to make the world a smaller place. And improving communication, I think, is key about that.
Absolutely. We'll talk about one of my favorite panels in just a moment, but I want to remind you this is day one of Soccerex Connected, presented by the Johan Cruyff Institute. We'll be hearing from them throughout the day. At the end of the day, we have a special session focusing around history, particularly the 1930 World Cup. That is presented by Mondial. Make sure that you engage with us as well. Use the hashtag SoccerXConnected, and there's the opportunity to win a signed shirt as well. All you've got to do is tell us your favorite footballer nickname or your own personal nickname, because Johan Cruyff had a number of different nicknames. And once we get into the first panel of you from the top, I will post an amazing photograph of all the signed shirts that are on offer. Louis Saha, Laurie Lindsay, Jean-Pierre Papin, and about 15 others. And every day we will be giving one of them away. So do make sure that you engage with us throughout the course of the day and the week. That hashtag, once again, is SoccerXConnected. So Pat, as we start to wrap up now, let's talk about, I think, my favorite panel of the day. It's certainly the most contentious, and it's called Changing Offside to Keep Fans Onside. And we're going to have Howard Webb, former Premier League referee and now a key decision maker in this field, as one of our speakers. And I suppose VAR's come in and everyone's sitting at home, and suddenly we're drawing lines everywhere and we're striving for accuracy, but we are microscopically looking at every single decision. So when you cheer for a goal, you almost have to delay that celebration and wait for the lines to be drawn and see whether a toe or an armpit was offside. What's your sort of take on this fascinating and highly contentious topic? Is accuracy better, or is there a danger that too much analysis is leading to paralysis and the fans just don't like it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably been the hottest debate for the last year or so. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of VAR, not just because it's impacted my club more than others over the last year or so, but I think my initial concern about it, does it kill the moment? For me, is all about moments. That last-minute winner, the equaliser, all of those things. So, does it become too forensic? I think we use it correctly, and there are issues behind that now with the laws. And do we all understand the laws correctly? Are they portrayed properly? And do we know what's offside, what's not? I think there's a lot of clearing up to do there. But I think to take away contention is a good one for me, because it kills a bit of the sort of the debate after the game. Was it a penalty? Was it not? It started as a game of opinions, and that's slowly being phased out, because I think it's connected to the big business side of the game. There's so much at stake. Things have to be correct. But I think that if we utilise the technology in the right way, like they have in tennis and other sports, then it can enhance the experience. There's some way to go for that, though, for me personally.
Yeah, well, so send us your thoughts as well. Hashtag Soccerex Connected if you've got an early opinion on this, and we can certainly put it to the panelists. And Pat, just finally, a word on another panel which will run throughout the week, which you already alluded to, as did I, sponsored by Mondial. We're going to be looking predominantly at the 1930 World Cup, but also the legacy of that and how it's affected modern football. And 1930 was a particularly iconic tournament. Incidentally, it was the year when our producers, Larry and Sean, were actually born. I think they're the oldest members of our team, into their 90s or so, and still working at Soccerex. I'm only kidding, obviously. They're a little bit younger than that, but not by much. But tell us a little bit about what we can expect as we relive some of the iconic history from the World Cup.
Again, it's part of the sort of innovation and the evolution, where fundamentally we work in the game, but we're all fans of the game. Not all of us, but most of us. I think that the saying that the guys at 1930 World Cup conferences have, which is, without knowing your past, how do you know your future? So I think that being a wannabe sort of historian or student of the game myself, it was something that, adding on the more sort of consumer-led or the more journalistic side of the game, I think made perfect sense. And James and his team have brought some fantastic panels to the table to add a new edge really to Soccerex as we look at the past and the development. And there's some really cool things happening this week on that, like the evolution of sports brands down the years. As a sports brand fan or a sports sponsorship fan, that's one for the geek in me, to look at the evolution of sports brands over the last 50, 70 years or whatever, and the impact in the game. But I think it really does add a new dimension to Soccerex and what we do. It's always been very business focused, and this is of course still that, but with a real consumer edge, and one for the sort of hardcore fan or wannabe historian, I think.
I would genuinely love to hear from anyone old enough to have watched or remember the 1930 World Cup. If you've got any thoughts, photos, memorabilia, make sure that you tweet us at Soccerex and use that hashtag SoccerXConnected. So Pat, just before I let you go and we get underway with our opening panel, let's look a bit more broadly ahead to the other 4 days of Soccerex Connected. What else can we look forward to from day 2 to day 5?
Well, as you know, we've got the break. The only way to incorporate as much information as we can into this week is to break the weeks in specific days. So tomorrow we'll go into Stadia Day, where we'll look at everything from sort of stage management in a post-COVID world to technology to architecture and all the things that go along with Stadia. We've got Performance Wednesday, obviously a wide range of topics there as well, looking at player performance, recovery, injury, those sort of things, and it will go on and on from there. And I think I'll kill the rest of the morning session by talking about the panels that I'm looking forward to. But there's a lot to go over this week, I think.
Great stuff, Patrick. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you, and you'll be back every single morning looking equally as suave. You've set the bar pretty high as far as fashion is concerned, so bear that in mind tomorrow with your jacket and choice of clothing. But for now, thanks for your time, and of course, well done on a successful Soccerex Connected. We're looking forward to the week and the day in particular, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Patrick McCreanor there, the head of sales and marketing at Soccerex.